Absolutely. We do believe, and it's undeniable fact that it is a religion of peace. Why I'm saying that? Because this religion, it's not a creation of now or just a while back, but it's been there for over 1400 years. It built civilizations. It took people out of misery, out of segregation, out of slavery. 1400 years ago, Middle East was full of slavery. And when Islam came, it came along with a set of rules, human rules. If you were to translate them today in today's language, you could say democracy. Why I'm saying that? Because the first constitution was built, when Islam came, and rules were set, like the how to come as a nation and decide on a certain laws that govern the society. The best and the brightest of the ummah, of the nation, surrounding initially, in the beginning, I'm talking about the beginning phase that put Islam in the Middle East. So this, the best and brightest, the closest Sahaba Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, they were the counselors, they were the advisors. So Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam never took the decision by himself, but he had to consult with his companions to come up with the decision. Okay, so from then on, Islam spread. Didn't spread by like the stereotype that's out there, spread by sword. No, a lot of scholars up to now, they're known in the Islamic civilization and Islamic academia. They were from Far East, India, Bukhara, Far East, China. They were converted to Islam by noticing the morals, the ethics that brought along by these Muslim traders. So the mercy goes on. The civilization that was built in Andalusia, in Spain, for over 700 years. Europe, in the Middle Ages, it was completely in darkness, and because of the Muslim and Islam's contribution, it took Europe out of darkness. We know all the libraries that were set by the Muslims in Spain, as I said, for over 700 years. Public libraries, light streets, sanitary systems. The Muslims, when they went to Andalusia, for instance, they went there to spread what they know best, civilization. That's why they built cities. They built, as I said, places for entertainment. That's why when you go now to Spain, you find all this architecture, amazing architecture. So how can you explain that people went as intruders or invaders to build? So they went there to build. So they built a civilization that speaks for itself nowadays. So at the end of the day, I do believe that Islam is a religion of mercy, and it's spread more, it's built more upon mercy and ethics and peace rather than anything else. That's the best question of all. I feel I'm at peace. I feel no conflicts within. Islam wants you to strive for success in the material sense of it. المؤمن القوي أحسن من المؤمن الضعيف, meaning the good believer, a strong believer, is better than a weak believer in sense of being highly educated. Being a Muslim, meaning to submit the will of God, the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does it mean, submit the will? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to be a good human being on earth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to worship Him and Him alone. Wants you to be a good husband, a good wife, a good sister, a good brother, a good neighbor, a good worker. رحم الله رجلا يأكل من كد يديه. God sends mercy upon a person who strives and feed himself from the sweat of his hands. Meaning you don't go ahead and collect a public aid and just relax at home. No, that's against Islam. Islam wants you to go out there and work honestly. If you are intolerant towards your parents, you're not a good Muslim. If you're bad to your neighbors, absolutely you're not a good Muslim. I'm not saying a Muslim neighbor, a neighbor, doesn't matter what kind of neighbor it is. If you cheat at work, you're not a good Muslim. If you go, we know that. I mean, if you go out there and commit suicides or commit this act of terrorism, absolutely, you are not a Muslim. Because, and this is fundamental, suicide in Islam is a major sin. Because in Islam, faith of Islam, there are minor sins, there are major sins. Suicide, whether you're killing yourself because you got fed up with life, or going out there and killing on behalf of some ideology, it is a major sin. And whoever takes his life or somebody's life, it'll be straight to hellfire, eternally. We do believe firmly in that. You strive for the better. One fine line. When you strive for the better, in accordance of the faith of Islam's guideline, which is built on honesty, integrity, etc. But if you strive to gain wealth on the expense of others, meaning cheating and manipulating the system, then no. Because the ultimate goal, if you become rich and still serving humanity, there's nothing wrong with that. If you become a leader, an influential leader, and you're just, you are fair, then there's nothing wrong with that. Because at the end of the day, you're serving the message of Islam, But if you trying to strive for some status and not having good intentions, then that's bad, and it's not within the core attributes of Islam. I've lived in this country for it's going to be close to 17 years. And I've lived and experienced firsthand, how the American society is reacting to what's happening, whether an attack to the United States or an attack in Europe that's been blamed on Muslims. From my own perspective, bad apples are everywhere. So history is full of it. I mean, probably it's not the time to list the incidents, committed by bad people. But it is a mistake to link, isolated, terrorist attacks and to the whole Muslim society. as I said, bad apples are out there. And we do condemn that, you know. And I'm 100%, you know, Muslims in the United States, Muslim leaders and imams and whoever out there to speak on behalf of Muslims, not only in the United States, but in Europe and elsewhere, they are out there to preach the same message, which means that we're human beings, and we love what you love. We love peace. We love prosperity. We love nice cars, and we love living in nice mansions and you know, and good economic privilege. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here, because I'm here for prosperity. So, I mean, it does contradict. If I'm a Muslim and I'm just into wars and into killings, and then why I'm here? I came to the United States looking for prosperity. I'm not here to destroy, to become a part and parcel of the American society, and I am part parcel of the American society, because I live in a metropolitan city. I work in an American company. I do contribute to the economy of the American society, or the American economy. I do spend money. I do pay my own taxes, and I pay them, and I'm happy about that. But back to your question, how you see American society at large, you know, vis-a-vis the Muslims, life, so to speak, in the United States. I've seen a great progress, and I've seen an open-mindedness. Why I'm saying that? Because now people, they're using more brains better. They're researching. They are not taking the news for granted, meaning they're not swallowing the news as is, but there is kind of a filtering out there which say, well, wait a minute. I work with a Muslim. He's not like that. I just sold my house to a Muslim family. They're just wonderful people. Oh, wait a second. A lot of cab drivers, they're Muslims. Well, actually, they're making sure I'm safe, and when I'm drunk, they're taking me home peacefully. They're not driving me like crazy, but they're courteous, and they're driving me the way, and I'm putting my life in their hands, and they're driving me home safely. Oh, wait a second. I see a lot of engineers and doctors, and they're saving lives. They're in the hospitals. They're pilots. They're everywhere. I don't know the statistics. Probably about 3 million Muslims in the United States, if I'm right. So these over 3 million people, how can you brush all of them with the same negative image? It's just unfair, you know. It's just unfair. But I'm very, very confident, and I'm very happy that I'm having an opportunity with you to speak about the truthfulness of Islam and the noble mission of Islam, which is peace. Peace among the Muslims themselves, and peace towards others. That tells me that there is an open-mindedness out there. People are reaching out to combat or to fight back the Islamophobia. Whenever a terrorist attack happens, my heart, cringes. My heart, beats a lot faster. It's like, oh my God, I hope you're not Muslims. Because now, not only me, but the Muslim communities everywhere. When a terrorist attack happens, oh my God, they need to be ready again to be subjected to the negativity again and the media attack, and the bad looks, maybe from a colleague who's now becoming suspicious, of you, but we learn to live your life, because you cannot change the course of history. People are, as I said, bad apples are out there, and when some extremist goes out there and made some horrible attacks, in your heart you wish it didn't ever happen. It didn't happen, but it unfortunately, these incidents happen, and it does impact negatively not only on Islam as a religion of peace, but also on Muslims living in the West, especially living in the West. Now they have to stand up and deliver the message and kind of like defending themselves for somebody else's bad act. It's, again, I'm gonna say that it's unfair when a tiny fraction of a small group do something bad, and the vast majority, we're talking about billions of Muslims all over the world, they have to suffer the consequences of that. It's just unfair. As human beings, we need to be just and fair, and not to stereotype, not to brush everyone with the same brush, and just be fair and just conduct the due diligence and say, well, hold on, wait a minute. Some guy, some addict or some fanatic just decided to do something bad. Well, that's something related to him, not to my neighbors, not to my classmates or colleagues. These are just normal Americans who are living and going by their lives, doing their work, and they have nothing to do with any bad actions that happen somewhere in the world. So again, it's unfair that we have to experience the negativity done by somebody else somewhere in the world. Well, see, Rick, ignorance is a bad thing. When you don't know about the other, you tend to fear them, especially when you hear constantly in the media that someone who's Muslim necessarily a bad person, and it's a dangerous slope. It's a very unfair, dangerous conclusion. If I hear incidents happening, bad incidents done by some other faiths, someone who's considered belonging to some other faith, to me, it just unrealistic to go ahead and say, well, all my neighbors, they belong to that particular faith, so therefore they must be thinking the same way. It's just irrational conclusion. It's baseless to just go ahead and based on that negative thought about Muslims, to say, well, all the Muslims are suspicious and we need to watch for. It's just a bad conclusion, and it's a baseless conclusion. What I'm going to say to that particular individual, well, myself, I don't work in isolation of the society. I drive on the same road as you drive. I stop at the stop sign as you do. I go to the supermarket and I buy the stuff you do. I live in a neighborhood, next to my Christian neighbors and Buddhist neighbors and Jewish neighbors, and one of my dentist doctors is a Jew. I deal with him. I'm his patient. So we don't live in isolation. I mean, look at me. I've lived in this country, and Muslims in this country, they just came in the United States before September, a couple of years before September 11, or they're just a few years back. No, they've been here for centuries. I read in some book, I mean, even, a lot of slaves, they came from Muslim countries, Ivory Coast and Guinea, and they were Muslims. Even Morocco, the first country to recognize the United States independence from Britain, the first Muslim country to recognize America's independence from Britain. So Muslims, as I mentioned before, they're your doctor, they're your engineer, they're researchers in the medical labs, they're the taxi drivers, they're pizza delivers. They're everywhere. So how can you stereotype all of them as fearful people and people to watch for? It's a baseless conclusion, and it's a rational way of thinking. It's irrational.